Reasoned reality is built on one conviction. When people are given evidence, clarity, and the freedom to think for themselves, they choose a better future. In a culture shaped by outrage, conspiracy, and rigid belief systems, this is a space for honest conversation where reason matters and facts still count. We talk with biblical scholars, historians, activists, artists, and everyday people navigating faith, politics, and culture with honesty and courage. Nothing is off the table. If you're tired of easy answers and ready for conversations that actually go somewhere, you're in the right place. This is Reasoned Reality. Hey friends, welcome back to the Reasoned Reality Podcast. My name is Joe Smith. I am your host. Today, I am joined by filmmaker Sharon Rocky Roggio, the director of the groundbreaking documentary 1946, The Mistranslation That Shifted the Culture. When 1946 was released, I was still like on my own journey towards whatever I ended, whatever you want to call this, open and affirming pastor. But I was so, and I know that you've had this conversation so many times, but it blew me away because the conversations that it sparked, right? About this mistranslation and the impact that one single word can have on just millions of lives. So, and I think everybody that's listening to this is either aware of that movie or has probably already seen that movie. And so I don't want to rehash too much of it because there's so much happening and you are so busy. So thank you for taking time to be here with us today.
No, it's just really exciting to hear how it's impacted so many people, whether you are affirming, whether you're queer or not, whether you're in that middle space or, or the film was that catalyst to kind of be like, oh, wait a minute, I really need to rethink this, which you've had a couple experiences like that as well, too. But as far as we're not going to change everybody's mind or wherever you fall on the spectrum here, or you think the movie's ridiculous or whatever, I always invite people to just at least watch it because I'm so proud of the team that we were able to put together and the work that we were able to do to make it as non-threatening as possible, as conversational as possible, as let's just sit down because we have loved ones who are impacted by this, who are either being oppressed or the oppressor, whether they know it or not, and so it's conversational and it does all the things. And so, being able to then just embrace the film and at the very least, let's all take a step back and realize the Bible wasn't written in English. And let's just do a little bit better on how we use it and recognize that, even if you don't agree with us at the end or you can't get there or it takes years to get there. That's our one ask at the very least in the engagement of the work.
I think that's incredibly fair. I think that comes across really well. And I know I've told you this before, and I know other people have too. The thing that really struck me the most about it was the fact that even in my searching, I never had to feel defensive about anything because of the way that you all handled the story, which is really what it's about as a story. And I know that you guys were very intentional about doing that. And it came across. And I know several people that have been able to sit down and watch that where they weren't able to have a conversation before, right? Like it was easier to watch the movie than it was to sit with somebody and talk because they could sit and watch the movie. They could process everything. There is no reason to feel defensive about anything. I didn't feel like you were trying to convince me of anything. Like you were just, right? Like you're just telling the story and this is what happened and here's how we got to where we got. And here you go.
Absolutely. And again, that's that academic journalistic approach to a real mistranslation, a relational approach that impacts our real lives, and just we're not out to tell people what to think or how to think. Our job as journalists and as people who want to, as change makers, is to provide as much facts and all of the data as possible so people can be informed to make better decisions moving forward. And so those were the notes for the team all the way moving forward. And like I said, we had an amazing team. As you can imagine, it's quite a lot to put a movie together. And everyone from volunteers to donors to the paid technicians just really contributed and held on to that core mission statement from the start to really, because otherwise we're just making something that is for the echo chamber that doesn't really get outside that echo chamber, right? And then we're doing all the things that we're accused of.
I love that. Well, let me ask you this. You have had some time since this movie first hit the scene, right? Like I can remember we weren't able to attend, but my wife and I, we were able to get tickets for the virtual New York in my doc. I can't remember what the thing was. It was like one of the first ones that you were able to stream it from. So it's been some time. Yeah. Yes. So it's been some time. What was that, like 6 years ago? Was that during 2020 or was that 21? 22. Okay. So that was 4 years ago. I'm curious, when you show up with this movie, what's different about that Rocky to this Rocky now, right? What would Rocky now say to Rocky then?
Engage with strangers that you need help from, and just different things. And so I really just reached out for help based on a need of, if I feel as impacted about this, there's got to be other people that feel as impacted. And homosexuality in the Bible movie. We're either too gay or too Christian, And so, but really what I learned is Hollywood and streamers and platforms are gatekeeping even more. Anything with religious content impact means bringing it to the audience that needs it the most. And so working within the communities. And part of that is language accessibility, which right now we've actually created 2 languages for Namibia. We're going to Africa this year, which is on a list of many places that we've been. And we have 10 languages so far that have been sponsored by organizations or individuals. Now we have enough money to do 5 other languages, and we're going to Germany later in the year. So we're getting the German folks. It's happening. It's finally happening. But we're getting 4 African languages, 2 for our South African tour, and 2 that we're going to just make available and provide the movie to our friends in Namibia and there's a lot of English speaking people in Namibia and South Africa, but we also want to know it's very important to make it available to the people outside of the big cities. And so we're going to just provide that in those regions. And when we did the same thing in Asia, after we left the Asian tour, we deserve equal participation in the church. Incredible.
Listen, while you were talking, I was just thinking, okay, so in the film, you talk about your background, and everybody's that's familiar with this, kind of familiar with your background. Your dad's a pastor, you grew up in the church. I'm curious, and there's a reason I'm curious because it's leading to another question. When you were little, growing up, were you ever told things like, God's going to do big things through you, and God's got a plan for you, and all that stuff? It's so funny. Okay, so yeah, so it's so funny to me because I got that same thing. I can literally remember moments where people said to me, God is going to do big things. And I always wondered, and I'm almost 50 now, so it was like, what in the world is this big thing? And I go to a new church and think, is this the big thing or whatever? And then it turns out that this is the big thing. And then my folks have come a long way over the last several years. And so they're incredibly proud of what we do now, but it was a journey for them too. But I have had so many people since come to me and be like, that's not exactly what we thought it was going to be. I was just like, yeah, me too. Yeah, me too.
Exactly. No, no, 5-year-old Sharon, AKA Rocky. Yes, little me, never imagined this would be the thing. But of course, you hear that growing up, especially in the church. Now, you don't hear it as much being a woman, I would say. But my
Believe that.
dad had 4 girls. So I was his hopeful one. I was the hopeful one, or I don't know. I was born on his birthday. If you watch the credits in the end of the film, I was able to sneak that little nugget in the credit sequence. You're going to have trouble with this one. because I questioned a lot, but I noticed right away that there was a problem when there was that hierarchy presented of God, man, woman, child. And it was very clear to me that there was something very wrong about this. And so I always went in with skepticism. I always went in with questions. And I would say I always had a faith, but it wasn't necessarily in the God that I was idea, because I was working and living in Hollywood, building a slate of projects to produce and working with a management team and working with other artists and different stuff. And 1946 kind of just fell into my lap with my personal experience and then learning of Kathy and Ed's important research. And I'm going to plug for the young man in 1959 to write the translation committee and say, "You've made a mistake and here's why." Could you imagine being 20 years old in the 50s, right, writing the head of the translation committee and having the, you know, confidence to
Confidence.
do that?
Yeah.
Yeah, and as a young gay man who knew he was gay but couldn't, to be on our newsletter, you can go to 1946themovie.com, hit subscribe, and you can see the things that we've done over the years. I'm the only person that really, I've got like a little bit of part-time help. So trying to get everything together with all the amazing stuff, as you can imagine, is also quite a task in itself. But I do the best I can to provide information of all the things that we're doing and continue to do. But yeah, I've got big plans to continue to have it go. The beautiful thing is I know the film is an independent success in the people that it's reached, the minds that it's that changed and hearts that have been moved and things like that. But we haven't even hit our potential. We've maybe had a couple 100,000 people see the film, but millions of people have heard of it and have talked about it. And I do think it's mandatory for everyone to see this movie, whether you're Christian or not. We can see how
Yeah.
the Bible impacts our lives. So
That that is it's literally like we rehearsed that, because that is the perfect segue to what I wanted to talk about next. Was there are a lot of people that listen or watch this that are not part of the church, or maybe they're, ex, Christians, if that's how you want to say it. They kind of just deconverted out of it. Or maybe or there's many that have no church background. And I've said it often, I will say it again, that even as a pastor in the church, I get so tired of hearing about Christianity in our culture, in our politics and stuff. And so I just can't imagine what it's like for people that aren't in the church. However, I think that it's important, especially in conversations like this, around this movie, around the things that you all are doing. I think it's important that people, like you said, even if you're not part of the church, you don't have any church background, that you watch this. Number one, it's good. I mean, it's just a good movie anyway. But number two, I think it's important because, especially in the United States, where the Bible has impacted our culture and society so deeply, that it's important, if you live here, to know that's not actually, are you sure? Because that's not really a thing. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? I really think it's important that people see things like this, or read like Kathy's book that's coming out, and understand, that's not actually right. And I'm not, you know what I mean? I'm not going to participate in that.
yeah, I mean, I often say, and I've heard from somebody on our tour in 2024, that it's only a matter of time before the Bible is used against you, whether you're Christian or not. And even within our own government, we see this push toward a theocracy. Well, it's like, what kind of Christian are we talking about? Because there's only one right type of Christian to the ones who want to dominate. And so other Christians are going to learn and realize very quickly that they're not in that dominant class, able to learn from each other on how the empire, the institutions, all of the big governments have weaponized our beliefs, our fears, and and use them against against us. So yeah, I always say, whether you're Christian or not, please engage with this film, or not even just the film, all of the work that other organizations are doing. I know there's great organizations like Christians Against Christian Nationalism, Separation of Church and State organizations. I'm sure you and the Reason to Reality have more. Do you have any resources like that on your page? I'm going to turn the interview around and now start interviewing you.
Yes. Yes. On the
Yeah,
Reason Reality website, Luke, who's the original creator, he has a lot of stuff that he's put up there. Yeah, there's good stuff.
great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to definitely check it out because, I'm working on advancing the movements of 1946. And before this call, we can talk about it. I'm working on a new tour that is in connection with the 1946 impact work. And, we did the road show. You were part of the road show we did in 2024, where we went to 15 cities across
Which was
32
really
days in
cool.
an RV. Yep, it was so great. We interviewed 55 people and had special guests on the stage, and local supporters in LGBTQ rights, in reproductive rights, in immigration law, in separation of church and state, in all of the ways that we feel misinformation is being pushed and real people and their beliefs and fears are being hijacked. And so we want to lead and start an organization that doesn't teach people how to think, who to fear, how to vote, you know, uh, and how to live in shame. We want an organization to, again, just provide good resources, data based information, not be afraid to engage academics. This is a book burning organization. We encourage free thinking and open reading and things like that. And then we want to hold town hall meetings where people can ask our experts questions, and see where it grows and see where it goes, and grow our own chapters, and really encourage families and educators and young people to, again, just to think freely and do better as a society.
Let me tell you why I love that so much. Now, before we started recording, you were talking about it, and I've been holding on to this. I am not a fan of like the Jubilee series and what some of these tours are doing around the country. Like Turning Point would do this. There's a couple on the left that are doing the same kind of things. And basically, if you've seen them, everybody's seen the clips where somebody asks the questions and there's like, it's very insulting. And like the Jubilee, I don't like the Jubilee because nobody's mind is changing. They're just like throwing arguments at each other and people are just digging in. And like, what's the point? I've seen very few episodes where I felt like there was enough conversation and enough respect and curiosity that maybe somebody's mind changed. So I think there's a real need in the United States for spaces of what you're talking about, right? Where people can come together and ask questions. And if I'm reading what you're saying correctly, it sounds like that, while you do have experts, but you're starting from a place of curiosity rather than, I've got the red flag and I'm coming up next so that I can argue with the guy, the person, the woman in the middle. It seems like what you're wanting to create is actual conversations rather than just like sound bites for TikTok or your reels.
Absolutely, absolutely. Otherwise, we're not going anywhere, and it's exhausting.
It is.
I've fallen victim to that clickbait stuff, and like, oh, wow, who do they have on today? But it's just like, I'm so over that. Like, I agree with you. It doesn't get us anywhere, and I think it causes more harm than good. It just then, anyway. Yes, we want people to feel that they are in a safe space where they can ask questions. That's another thing, like some of the organizations. And it's like, one of the big things I say when I speak at churches or anywhere, it's like, if you can't ask questions in the space that you're in, you're probably in the wrong space and you need to find another place to go. And so how are we creating spaces that are properly vulnerable with each other to be able to engage in hard conversations? And it's not easy. The people that we bring on, that we're going to bring on the tour with us, and even me, I'm guilty of it on social media. You say things in the comment section that maybe you're not proud of, like, and it's really
Things
difficult. Yeah, it's really difficult to engage maturely with some of the rhetoric that comes your way daily. But we're going to do our best to be up there and represent, our ideas as best as possible, but also be there to listen as best as possible, and not get into the nuance or the craziness of bickering and fighting. And, so we'll have to figure out the moderator situation. We'll have to have the right host up there, I guess. I don't know. But also, I think what we are trying to build, and what it sounds like, y'all are on board with, is if we lead with that sense of purpose for conversation, hopefully people who come in to engage have that sense as well, whether you agree with us or not, or you're in the middle. And we found that in the 1946 tour. I've met people who have shown up that did not believe that being gay was okay, and didn't want to go. And by the end of it, ended up like sponsoring one of the legs of our tour, ended up like giving us some money. Like they were thinking about it. It's pretty amazing, And so you just never know what can happen in those spaces when they're created. And yeah, there's a need. So if anybody wants to help, please send me an email. Let's talk.
Yes, we'll put all that in the show notes. So if somebody's listening to this, so they can reach out and get a hold of you. Uh, you brought up the tour that you had, and you've been touring all over the place, but that specific tour through the southern states where you guys did this road trip, and you like took the hardest route possible through the hardest states, and Florida, where we are, was fortunately one of those over in Jacksonville, and that was a lot of fun. I'm curious what you learned during, going through that. Like, are there things that maybe, so much is informed right now by social media, and for good or for bad, right? Like there's good things that happen there too. I don't want to move past that. However, I think one of the things that happens with social media, or just the way that the news is driven anymore, is it shows just lots and lots and lots and lots of division. And I think there is lots of division. However, I also think that there are things that we have much more in common than the algorithms will show us. And I'm curious, even if that's not true, I'm curious what you found through that tour of the Southern United States. Yes, it is.
And I think we went to Tulsa. I'll have to look at the notes. Anyway, but yeah, just trying to hit places where we went to Salt Lake City, where the Bible is weaponized, or there's a big influence of Christian nationalism or LGBTQ, anti-LGBTQ rights. But like we picked Frisco, Texas, because Frisco banned the most books in 2023. And we did our tour in 2024. So we're like, we're going to Frisco, even though we have resources in Dallas. It's not too far. So we did ask our Dallas friends to help us a little bit, but we picked cities that were a little tougher, that we didn't really necessarily have first degree connections with. So it was a little bit more phone calls and finding a church or finding a community center to host us and things like that. But to answer your question, the thing we really did learn along the way, I mean, you said it yourself, is we're more alike than we are different. And we had this tour. The next tour I want to do, we're going to be flying friends. So anybody who's listening who might be one of the participants and one of our experts, we won't put you in an RV for 32 days in the middle of August where it was hot. And it was, the RV broke down twice, which there's a whole podcast about our experience called the Culture Shift Tour at season 1 on our YouTube at 1946.
It's really good, by the way. No, it's fun.
Yeah, before. And now they have queer and trans people sleeping and staying in their home, as guests for a couple nights. Because that was that kind of road trip too. We were definitely staying in people's homes. So this year we need a little bit bigger budget again for our experts, because we're going to be getting hotel rooms for them. So that's where I've grown over the last 4 years. We know we need bigger support, and we've had the track record to back it, and now we need to amplify it a little bit. But it was fun, and I knew we took the right crew to be able to do that, to be able to go in an RV. And honestly, at the end of the podcast season, you'll see that everyone in the RV said they would do it again. So we all hugged it out afterward. No one hated each other. It wasn't that kind of road trip, thank God.
Yeah, that makes a big difference. And you had some good people on there too. You did. You had good people with you. Yeah,
we did. We had a good crew, and all the people we met along the way was amazing. Free Mom Hugs showed up at every event to give out free mom hugs and just help at the door and different things. And we got to interview you and your wife, and Brent Roberts was there, our associate, who was our road manager. Dan McClellan, we got to meet in real life, which was really cool, and one of the people that really influenced me and helped a lot of us, as we're going through deconstruction and different things. But we interviewed about 50 people on the road. So I've got a lot of archived stuff that I need to go through. And part of my ask for this next year is to find an editor that we can hire to help me really go through it. So that's another thing I'll be looking for some grant funding for, because there's so much out there that we talked about. And we can share those stories with people. I think it's so important to hear all the different stories out there from allies, from parents, from educators, from pastors, all around the US. We were able to interview to talk about what's going on in their communities. So besides the edit idea, we want to amplify that tour for 2027 and turn it into something that's annual, but really like we do twice a year. So it's not a one-off idea that we want to build now. Reason, reality, and Joe, just so you know.
So be watching out, people, because it's coming.
We're watching out. We're coming. All the conservatives watching now are like, oh no.
I got lots I can say. I'm going to be nice. But I think one of the most exciting things, though, is the fact that not only has the work really impacted people here in the United States, but now you guys are going global. You just had a whole thing in Asia, and you were in like South Korea, and off air, we were talking about all the places that you're going. That's crazy.
Yeah,
I mean,
this
good crazy.
Yeah. So we've been to Asia before: Singapore, Hong Kong, Taiwan, Bangkok. We've been to all throughout Europe, all throughout Canada, but we were reinvited to go back to this place. It's an organization called Amplify. And what they do is they gather queer and affirming Christians from all over Asia. So there were 10 different countries that came out to be at this conference in Taiwan. And so Kathy got to present her new book, and Ed was there as well and got to talk. And then I was there and I got to give a talk. I did like a preacher talk. They didn't show the movie, so they wanted me to like say something. I'm like, you want me to write? Like, I was like, oh, here we go. But it went over really well. And we had one of our mothers with us who has led our prayer team for the last, 6 years. And she is a Korean born woman who then migrated to the United States and lives in the United States with her husband and was able to come back to that Asia tour. We went from Taiwan to Korea, and she was able to go to the motherland and reconnect with people that she, went to church with. She was in elementary school, and she connected with PFLAG in Korea. Isn't that amazing? There's a PFLAG organization out there, and was able to meet other parents and moms and things like that. So that was so successful. And Kathy, Ed, and I did an interview with a progressive Christian news organization. It's up on YouTube now. And the reason why I'm highlighting this is Korea, I don't know if you know, is such a conservative country, and conservative religious ideology is thick there, and anti-LGBTQ and things like that. So just to be able to get a platform, then get a news interview, have it be up on YouTube, have people help us translate into all these different languages and share the movie has just been amazing. The biggest takeaway, I know I'm talking too long, but it's really exciting. The biggest takeaway in Korea, faith and things like that. So it's quite an honor, as you can imagine, to be on such a international stage as the Human Rights Conference at World Pride. And then we're going to South Africa in September, Johannesburg and Cape Town, and then we're ending the year in Berlin in December. So sorry if I repeated any of those.
No,
like I said, sign up for the newsletter. But yeah,
goodness,
I know.
How do you keep all the time zones straight? How do you sleep?
Yeah, so Apple Watch, I guess, helps with that. No, I don't know what time zone and I am right now. And I just ask. The weather's the trickiest thing, because it changes, and some places I can do the curly, other places I can't even do the straight. So girl problems. You don't have to go through that though, Joe.
I don't have to go through anything. Yeah, nothing.
Right. I envy you though, actually, sometimes. So you might be the lucky one in this situation.
Well, yes and no, man. Listen, this has nothing to do with anything, but my son has got gorgeous hair, and I lived through it. I just would kill hair again. Anyway,
we're gonna have to do a segment with you with some, we're gonna sidebar to a fun segment, maybe, anyway.
That's funny. Hey, I want to ask you, and feel free to tell me to jog on if you want to. You have been all over the world. You've had, conversations with, just gobs of people on just a spectrum of belief and political stances and all the things. I think that you're one of those unique people that has the ability to be a bridge, right? And not everybody has that, nor should everybody try to be that. You just happen to have that, whether that was something you decided to do, or that was also maybe just part of your personality and maybe a combination of whatever it is. And I'm curious because I'm trying to think back to my days of being like not affirming. And I never, and this is for me, it's just not my personality. Like I never stood on a stage and preached against it. I just never did. I just never found it very helpful. I've always thought I had conversations with people. And even in my non affirming days, I tried to be as loving as possible in those conversations because it was such a personal issue. Right. And for me personally, it was more born out of like, this is what I'm supposed to say rather than something that I was like super convicted about, you know? So I've never really been able to understand just the emotion behind a lot of it, you know, the vitriol. I've never been able to wrap my brain around it because even in my most conservative days, I never operated from that place. So I'm curious, why do you think that happens? I mean, I know that I did a thing the other day on like some of the psychological things that happen behind the scenes. You know, you've got this worldview defense and you've got this symbolic threat. And there are reasons, you know, that people react the way they do. However, I'm just curious from your perspective, which is such a unique perspective, why do people just respond with so much hatred or even hate that community? I just don't get it.
There's so many layers to this question, to the reason why people have so much against the LGBTQ community, why there's so much pushback against the LGBTQ community. And there's really a lot of history and nuance that I don't know enough about. I'm sure Kathy and her new book will explain a lot more of that, where power comes into
We'll be
play.
talking to her too
Yeah,
next
for
week.
sure. Definitely talk to her. Colonialism comes into play, as we're talking about and looking at even for our trans and non-binary siblings around the world. We know that queer, trans, non-binary, all of us have existed in the spectrum throughout the existence of mankind. And we even see in the Talmud where the rabbis recognized 8 different genders. And poor James Tellerico is getting smashed right now for saying there are 6 genders. And it's like, well, he's not wrong, and like, even though the rabbis weren't necessarily affirming those identities at the time, or not even recognizing them as identities, but they were recognizing that there was more than the binary. And that's important. That really matters because they were seeing intersex bodies, male to female, female to male, androgynous characters, people who they weren't sure of, and they were categorizing them. And then we know other people groups from all around the world have recognized and celebrated two-spirit people, to be honest, especially a woman.
Yeah.
And so these things have changed over time. And I don't think it's necessarily gay people that have changed it. It's the people around us and the people who have power in these society structures and governments who have changed this idea. And why has marriage changed? Now, thankfully, it has moved more toward love, because before it wasn't love. And there's a woman called Sarah Rubin who wrote rights in that passage. Yeah, actually he was, and so when you really start to break it down and think of it along those terms, the power structures find these verses very useful. It's also useful to put women in their place, because if you can keep, immigrants and people of color and other marginalized communities in their place, then you keep women in their place, you keep queer people in their place, and then this group of people remains.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I feel that. I think a lot of people don't realize how manipulated they're being, because that was one of the things for me was in my own journey of that was a lot of my anger. And, as a pastor, it was not super healthy. It just wasn't, but it was where we were. Like you can see if you went back on YouTube and watched old sermons, you can see there's a lot of anger and a lot of hurt that comes through, because I was the only one that could, on stage at the time. But that was where a lot of my anger came from, was the fact that like, you guys just lied to me. My entire life, you have lied to me and manipulated me and the people around me that I love. And that made me so angry. And I gave as much grace to individuals as I possibly could, because knowing that a lot of us just do what we've been told, or like we were handed something as like gospel truth, and just it's hard to it's hard to understand that you have a lens at all when it's just handed to you from the time that you were little, right? And like you begin to just see it as life rather than no, this is just a lens. Remove the lens and you're going to see something different. But that was part of it for me, was just like understanding how manipulated I had been and these things had been. It just infuriated me to no end.
Match. That's probably a better way to say it, but that wouldn't have worked so well at the beginning of the movie, maybe. We should forget it. No, I'm just kidding.
Poetic. That is easily the, yeah,
It's
yeah.
way too late. There's no way we're opening any edit files. Don't get any
No,
ideas any out there.
no, 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 no. Well, Kathy, I am going to be talking to Kathy soon about her new book. I'm excited to have that conversation. And that was one of the things that, and I know that you have probably had this conversation a million times. However, I think it's so important when you have somebody like Kathy in your corner who does such scholarly work and is just a dog with a bone. Like that, like her book, Walking the Bridges Canyon, was one of two books that really changed everything for me personally. And it was literally because she's a word nerd. And it was like, she's speaking my language. Like, oh, I love this stuff. Like, keep talking. And then like her YouTube series, Untangling the Mess 1 and Part 2, which are really long, but very worth it if you're really diving into it like I was. But to have somebody like that, that has the history, that has the knowledge, just had to be completely invaluable.
Well, it was wonderful, and to still be
Yeah.
friends with her. We did some tours this last trip in Asia together, like some vacation, some days off, and just able to just be friends. And it's just really great. She's a super strong ally to the queer community. She's got no skin in the game. She lost her whole community by sticking up for us and just saying, no, this isn't right. And has spent countless hours doing the work. But yeah, she's amazing and everyone should get to know her. If you don't, you should follow her. And she's really accessible too. Like she really just like us loves to share the information and wants to just, as you know more, are we doing better kind of
Yeah.
mentality. So she's cool. So I can text her anytime. I can say, sometimes she'll say, I'll get to you tomorrow. I'm going on a hiking trail, which happens a lot. She hikes twice a day.
Yeah. The pictures that she posts and stuff, man, just gorgeous area. Like that looks so fun. I mean, other than the snow, I don't like snow. So those pictures, I'm just like, okay, I love watching that from way back here. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah. I look forward to that. I don't want to keep you too much longer. I know that you've got stuff coming up next and some big things. However, I want to dive into one final question. And I know a lot of interviews, they'll talk about, well, like what do you find hopeful right now? What keeps you blah blah? And I like the question. I don't know how many times you can say, answer that without saying the same thing. So I started asking a slightly different question because I think in the season that we're in, I think it's a much more honest question. I struggle. I struggle with, you talked about it before, like in what social media can do, how we'll respond, and maybe not so proud of that. And right now with everything, it's just constant, whether social media or just the news. And I know it's by design. We're just constantly being bombarded. Our nervous systems are constantly firing, right? We're not made to live like this. So I'm curious, in the work that you do, because you are so on the front lines of stuff. What do you do to remain connected to your own humanity right now? What is keeping you human?
Beauty of things around you, So I think it's really, no matter where you are, even if you're in your home or your backyard, you can find those little escapes. Go to, a park, find a new park, find a lake around the corner that maybe you've never visited before, or go to a movie or something, just find a time to just separate, take a break, and escape in a sense where it connects you in a way that you never even imagined. So yeah, just allowing myself to do that. I also
I could not agree more. I think that so many things would be better if we just reconnected with the nature around us. We just forget. We forget that we're on this little tiny speck of dust spinning at how fast that's hurtling through space, and just this infinite thing that we're in. And we forget that. We forget, like, one of the things that my wife and I love to do, and this is going to make us sound old, but we have our kitchen table by the kitchen window, and right outside, my wife she's created this like bird sanctuary and squirrel thing. And so we'll sit at dinner and we'll eat and we'll watch the squirrels wrestle and play and the birds. And it's literally like you forget that you watch them and you're just like, the world is on fire. And I know this is super reductive, so I recognize that, but the world is on fire and they have no idea. they're just doing their thing. And it's just like, I wish I could have a little bit of that. But to your point, just like forgetting everything for a minute and just like sitting outside and watching that take place. Yes, I feel that deeply.
I do
Yes.
too. And there's no shame in the bird watching and squirrel watching game. I must be getting old too, because I love it. So
Yes.
there's nothing
Well,
like a good bird
it's
watching
wisdom.
day.
We'll call it wisdom. We won't call it age. We'll call it wisdom. So,
Exactly.
Rocky, I
Exactly.
appreciate your time. I know I do know how busy you are and all of the things that you do, and that's not like, trying to pat you on the back or whatever. There's just a lot of things pulling your attention in different directions. So I very much appreciate the time that you've been able to give. And if stuff is going to be in the show notes, but if somebody really does want to reach out, how's the best way for them to get in contact with you?
Yeah, all the info's at 1946themovie.com. You'll find our email address, 1946themovieinfo@gmail.com. Send us an email, and you can find us at 1946 The Movie on all social media handles too. We're very accessible in the DMs.
Yes.
So, follow us, send us a DM. That'll be really great. But I wanted to say thank you to you. Reasoned Reality has been a huge supporter of 1946, and I really appreciate the collaborations, the partnership, the not so feeling alone out there. I see all in the comments sometimes when we're getting attacked, and I'm like, oh, Pastor Joe is there for us. This is amazing. So I see you and I love it. And it really, that also helps keep me going and gives me hope. So thank you,
Well,
Reasoned
yay.
Reality, Joe Smith. Yeah. So
Well, good. That makes my day. So
good.
yes, I'm
Good.
happy to do that. I'm more than happy to do that.
Yay.
Sometimes I'm a little too happy to engage with some of these trolls. So like I need to reel that in a bit.
Oh, he
But it's
said
fun.
it. Nice.
Yes.
He went there. I
Yes.
love it. Good.
Yes.
Good.
Anyway. Well, hey friends, thanks for following along. Make sure that you hit those show notes. And I could not encourage you more to go follow Rocky 1946. If you have not seen the movie, you can stream it. I think it's still on Prime, right? You can still get it on Prime.
Prime, Apple TV, YouTube, Eventive, Fandango, Vudu, and Lesflix.
There it
Lots
is.
of options.
All the places. So do that. Wherever you're finding you're finding yourself today, I hope that you are having the exact day that you need. And don't forget, you might be the only voice of reason that somebody hears today. So don't be afraid to use it. All right, friends, until next time.